GoodHacks is back like it never even left. Hey, everybody, and welcome to Season 2. He's Max, I'm Tim, we're GoodHacks. We're changing it up a little bit. We're still on the audio platforms. We're now on Stitcher. You can find us on Spotify, on Anchor. The list goes on. But we're also going to be utilizing our YouTube now, so that's why we've got a couple of different cameras up in here. We changed our location a little bit. We've got some novelty uniforms on if you're watching. But we're excited to get going. It's still a 2019 season. We took a little bit of a hiatus for the All-Star break, and we had a couple of things going on in our lives, Max.
We did. We had finals. We had graduation. We had a little bit of a time to kick back. It's been a long academic year for us. And it's still going. We're still here in Evanston. We're doing our thing. But like Tim said, if you're listening to us right now on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever, that's great. If you're watching us on YouTube right now, you get to see the Durham Bulls tee and the non-branded pinstripes customized jersey.
Oh, here we go.
I'm going to turn around and give you that. Ooh. I haven't worn this since my bar mitzvah, folks.
I wear this shirt fairly often.
Okay. So the right way to do this, in other words, is to not only listen to us, but also watch us. We're going to get some clips up on Twitter, too, but stay tuned. We're going to try to make this interactive, and it'll be great.
That way you can just interact with us in different ways, I suppose.
Precisely.
But it's still, in essence, the GoodHacks pod, and just kind of as a flashback to some of the stuff that we've already done. It's kind of our mid-season review, the story so far episode, as we get set for the second half of the season starting later on this week. So we wanted to take a second to give ourselves some pats on the back collectively. We're going to actively do that here,
Sure.
I think.
Yeah.
And because, look, we've got plenty of things wrong. I get so many things wrong every week, and so many things that don't go into the final recordings that I've said that have been wrong. But we've gotten some things right as well. So let's start there on the podcast and on some of our other media, I suppose. We've given you guys players to watch, trends to watch, teams to watch, prospects to watch, and so far a lot of them they've come true.
Well, we would take up the entire hour of this show if we were going to list all the things that we've said that have been brilliant and smart and comprehensive. I'm totally kidding. But there are 5 names that Tim and I want to highlight here. 5 names that have come from either the podcast, like he said, or quick little videos on Twitter that we've done, starting with Mike Soroka, who has the highest win-loss percentage in all of baseball. For an Atlanta Braves pitching staff that felt the need to have to go out and get Dallas Keuchel because Mike Fulton-Nevitz is having a bad year. Kevin Gausman hasn't been anything like he was in past years. They needed a starter. This guy has been everything they need and more. For a time, he was, rumored to be in the Cy Young race. I think he's kind of cooled off just a tad, but I had him in my must-adds fantasy segment, and he's been an absolute gem for me in fantasy. So, truthfully, of all of the pitchers that we've talked about, it's him and it's also Lucas Giolito, Tim. And after Carlos Rodon went down for them, we talked about the fact that the White Sox need an ace, and Giolito has been on that team for a while now after the Adam Eaton trade. He used to be a number 1 prospect, folks.
Yep.
He was highly touted, but he had never proven it yet until this year. And he's been absolutely on a tear. And Soroka in the NL, Giolito in the AL, both of them in the conversation for Cy Youngs. We would be remiss not to talk about those
the White
two.
Sox have had these high-end pitching prospects for so long, mostly because they've been so bad, let's be honest. So you trade guys away and you get those prospects back. So like you said, Giolito, really the centerpiece of that Adam Eaton trade. Trade a great player like him, you got to get a top prospect back. So all of these guys have been at the forefront of the prospect pool for a while. And at one point, I'm wearing the Durham Bulls shirt. At one point, the Charlotte Knights, their rotation in AAA, in some order, was Lucas Giolito, Reynaldo Lopez, and Carson Fulmer.
Oh, wow.
Didn't matter. They still didn't win the division. But that is a heck of a 1, 2, 3, and there was even one or two other starters in that mix that I'm forgetting right now, but that was your AAA rotation.
Sure.
So you look at that, and you've got some hitters in that mix like Matt Davidson and Kevin Smith, who plays for the Angels now, Jason Coates, who's on the Bulls now. This is a legitimately solid team, but they still didn't really get it done in AAA. But the point is, you still have these guys coming in, and now you add a guy like, just before that, Carlos Rodon, who was a top 10 pick coming out of NC State. Now you've got Dylan Cease, who's their top pitching prospect who just made his debut a week or two ago. The White Sox have had these pitching prospects for a long time, and finally, because Fulmer's been hurt and Reynaldo Lopez hasn't been very good in the bigs the last year or two, now finally they have that one guy that has really become a proven commodity in Giolito, and it's nice to see that potential finally realized.
I mean, it was always Twins and Indians this year in that division, and it will be at the end, even if, the Twins are a little bit worse than they have started off because they've been amazing. But the White Sox are 42 and 44 at the break, effectively 500. I think this is a really solid year for the White Sox. Again, they lose their, for all intents and purposes, Rodon is their ace.
Yeah.
And Giolito's stats right now are tremendous. He's 11-3, 786 win-loss percentage in 17 games started. He has 2 complete games, which apparently is the most in the bigs.
Okay.
I'm just finding this out right now.
All right. You never know.
1 shutout. Remember, he pitched that complete game shutout. There
Sure.
you go. That was one of the complete games.
That is one.
And last year, in 2018, he led the league with 118 earned runs and 90 walks.
Wow.
And now he won't win Cy Young.
No.
We'll get to that later. But he's going to be potentially top 5. I don't think that's too much of a stretch to say he'll be top 5 in the voting.
I think if people are paying attention, then that is a legitimate person to watch.
Right.
And the comeback story aspect of it is very impressive as well.
And like you said, there are a couple other guys that you've seen in AAA who are now in the bigs or going to be soon. This is going to be a pitching staff to be reckoned with in the future. And we'll see.
Maybe you give up. I mean, not full on, but in terms of expectations, maybe you're giving up on Reynaldo Lopez at this point because you've gotten to see him. Carson Fulmer you haven't seen. You've not seen Carlos Rodon fully healthy, and now you're getting to see Dylan Cease, who they got from the Cubs.
And Kopech, too.
And that's the other one. That's the one I couldn't remember. That was the other one I couldn't remember. Michael Kopech, thank you, who's also hurt.
Right.
So
that's 5 guys.
That's 5 guys right there.
So talk to us in 2 years when all 5 of those guys are healthy, potentially, and it'll be fun.
We'll see.
So moving on from pitchers to hitters,
yeah.
And one guy who has already been around, we'll get to the 2 rookies in a second, but Franmil Reyes has been raking for San Diego. And we can talk about the Padres later on as a team that is mathematically still in the wild card race.
Sure.
I mean, they make the trade, not the trade, they sign Machado, and this is a team that is a force to be reckoned with in that division. Dodgers are running away with it, but the Padres are right there. And Reyes, they have a surplus of outfielders. We were talking about this the other day, that it's kind of like what happened with the Brewers the other year where they had to end up trading Domingo Santana.
Okay.
They traded him because they had this surplus of outfielders, and Santana wasn't playing at his best because he wasn't getting in every single day. So they dealt him to another team so he could play. Reyes is playing every day, but they have Margot, they have Renfroe.
And Will Myers.
Janikowski, I don't know if he's still up in the bigs.
Not much.
But Reyes is...
You can't take him out.
Yeah, I think you could say that he's the best of all of those, definitely in terms of power. I know Renfroe had that 3-home-run game.
Yeah, he's still got some, but,
Reyes has been great. I don't know why he wasn't in the home run derby. A lot of people were wanting him to be in the home run derby.
I saw rumors not rumors, but, anglings for Renfroe and Reyes to both get in the derby, and neither of them did.
Well, it was in San Diego a couple years ago.
Okay.
Remember that was when... Did Stanton win that one? I think Stanton won that one. I don't know. Let's look up Reyes' stats.
Yeah, I mean, the point is that they have the surplus of outfielders, so maybe you think one of them goes. And Will Myers has probably had the worst year out of all of them, but he is the least desirable in terms of his contract. So he is going to be the hardest to move. So in a perfect world, do you want to keep Hunter Renfroe or Will Myers? Maybe you want to keep Hunter Renfroe, but Renfroe is going to be a lot more... appealing to other teams that are looking for a more controllable outfielder with better contract terms, all that stuff. So Renfroe's been linked to fringe contenders for a little while. He's been linked to the Rays. I don't really know that they need a right fielder necessarily because they have a load of decent defenders that will play DH a lot of times. Like Avisail Garcia is a prime example. He's their right fielder, but probably should be a DH. And so they don't need another one of those guys because you would like to have Ji-Man Choi at DH if you're going to have somebody else at first. we can go on there,
Right.
but I don't know that Renfroe to the Rays makes perfect
So,
sense.
look, we digress. Reyes is in his sophomore year, and last year he had 16 homers in 87 games. So he's played 85 games this year. He has 25 homers.
Yeah.
He's figuring it out. Definitely going to be fun to watch moving forward if he can continue to get better. He might be a 40 home run guy if he really figures it out, a 50 home run guy. I mean, he's on pace for 50 right now.
Yeah, it's not
quick maths.
It's not. It's impressive. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
No.
And that's not a guy that you've heard of a lot as well because he plays for the Padres.
Right. So, and lastly, the two other names we wanted to get to, we got our minor league guy.
It's me.
Austin Riley and Yordan Alvarez. Yeah. We got a tip on Alvarez, and we ended up talking about him with the Astros. One of the best pure swings I think you can pinpoint in terms of the rookies this year. And when he hit his first 2 home runs in his first couple days up with the team, we talked about the fact that the first one was a beauty, fundamentally sound swing. And then the next one, he was out in front, and it was a changeup in the dirt, I want to say,
right.
And he flicked it like he got his 6-iron
it
out,
wedge, right?
and got it over the right field fence. So, beautiful swing, but also so smart in the box to be able to adjust to certain pitches, and he's debuting, like a month ago. Like he's barely been around, and it's crazy.
Yeah, he's been just remarkable to watch develop. The rise has been meteoric, really, and I'm looking through just his game log right now, and I think I count 4 hitless games so far.
In how many?
Let me show you exactly. 19. And one of those games was a pinch hit appearance that he didn't. So it was a game that he played.
So 3 out of 18.
I think it was 4 real games, and then that 5th one where he went hitless in a pinch hit appearance. So
that's
4
hitless
hitless games.
Astros will take that.
And a bunch of 2 3-hit games, 1 multi-homer game, 7 total home runs in 19 games.
And talk about meteoric rises. Austin Riley has been just that too.
Absolutely, and he's somebody that I've tracked a little bit this year, but he homered in his debut as well, and he's done nothing but homer since he's come up. He's got 16, and he's hitting 260 as well in 185 at-bats. And like we've talked about before, moving positions.
Yeah.
Alvarez is going to be the DH mostly. That's where he's been since he's been up more often than not for Houston. But Riley's moved into left field. Obviously, they don't have a DH, and they've got a former MVP playing third base in Josh Donaldson. So you need somewhere else to put him.
Well, that's what happened when Ender Inciarte was hurt.
Yep.
And Riley's playing third base in the minors. I guess they told him, hey, this is your shot. Play outfield a couple days. Next thing you know, he's called up. He's starting in left, and he's playing out there every day now and holding his own. I mean, I don't know if he's necessarily one of the best outfielders in the majors. He probably isn't, but his bat is irresistible for this team. And the Riley and Alvarez, they're both guys coming up on a team that isn't rebuilding. They're not necessarily in dire need of young talent because they have so much of it already.
Both of them do already, yeah.
Both the Braves and the Astros, they've won their divisions already. I mean, let's be honest. Okay, the Braves, maybe not. The Braves have a stacked group behind them.
They're pretty far ahead.
But even still, the Astros are going to run away with the West, and I would foresee that the Braves hold their own in the East.
I think that's
the
fair.
Nationals and Phillies league a little bit behind. So both of these guys are putting the managers in tough spots, saying, you didn't think we were going to be ready this year, but here we are.
Here we are, right.
And we're in the discussion for Rookie of the Year.
So those are some guys that we've gotten right, but sometimes, as we've mentioned, we could spend, the rest of this podcast talking about everything that we've said that's wrong as well, but we'll spend just a little bit of time on it. First of all, when we were talking about the American League, previewing what had happened over the first couple of weeks, I thought it was going to be an arms race for the AL Central between the Twins and the Indians. And to me, the Indians were the team to beat, and the Twins were the team on the heels, and it's not been that way. The Twins have powered their way quite literally to the top of that division, and I don't think that any team is going to catch them. We mentioned the bottom is not very good. The Tigers are the reclamation project team and just bring in a bunch of other, you could say, has-beens. I think reclamation project is the nice term. And then the Royals have Whit Merrifield, and that's it, and Jorge Soler, and that's it.
Right.
And then the White Sox have a couple of players here and there, but not a great team.
But the division race is those two teams.
It's those two.
But in reality, it's only the Twins.
Right. So that's and if the season ended today, the Indians would be in the second wild card spot, but the Twins would be in the divisional series as the division winners. And you said that, and I didn't.
Right. So we were trying to decide Indians' amazing pitching staff, Twins on paper before the season, great lineup.
Right.
So what's going to win that battle? Is it the pitching or is it the hitting? And if they played a 7-game series between the two of them, then we really have to decide that. But clearly it's been the offense that's carried the Twins. I did pick them to win the division, so great for me. But I was also worried about the fact that Sano, Crone, and Cruz, new to this team, they're all kind of the same person in the sense that they rely heavily on the home run, and a lot of the time they're going to go 0 for 4 with 2 Ks,
Sure.
especially Sano.
Yeah, definitely.
But pickups like Marwin Gonzalez, Max Kepler has had a tremendous campaign. Yeah. Jorge Polanco started at short in the All-Star game over Frankie Lindor, who is the hometown hero there, so you're surprised about that. Even with a fan vote, this team is great. Berrios, their ace, he's tremendous. Jake Odorizzi is having a great year. I'm just listing names because there's so many great players on that team right now. The only thing is, I don't know if they can make it past the first round of the playoffs, because if the season ended today, they'd play the Astros. So shameless plug, look at our low-budget breakdown of what we think is going to happen in the playoffs, because that's going to be a really interesting series.
Yeah, we'll talk more about it as we get closer, if that does indeed turn into the postseason matchup, and it seems very likely, because I don't know that either of those teams would catch the Yankees for first in the American League, or any team for that matter catching the Yankees.
And I don't even think that the Indians will make the playoffs.
I don't either. And that's the news this week. I guess we want to be slightly newsy on this, is that, and we're going into the trade deadline in the end of this month, and we'll talk a lot about the rumors and the trades as they happen, as I'm super, super excited. There are going to be loads of actually really impactful players moved, especially starting pitchers. I think every team in the playoff picture right now, save for maybe 2 or 3, those 2 or 3 teams are really the only ones that are going to look at themselves and say, we are happy with our starting pitchers as we have them. So the Nationals, probably, the Dodgers, and maybe the Astros are really the only teams I can think of that say we're set. We don't really need.
And even still, you wouldn't.
Of course, you would love another one.
Right.
Absolutely. But the point is, like, if you have to prioritize, you're going to prioritize something different.
Sure.
For the Nationals and the Dodgers, you're going to prioritize the bullpen. So, for example, every other team in the playoff hunt right now would love another starting pitcher. So where is that going to come from? And the thing is, you've got front runners that also would like a starting pitcher, like the Yankees. And the Red Sox, who are out of the playoffs right now, I don't think that they make it into the playoffs unless they get another starting pitcher.
Right.
So the news this week was that Nathan Eovaldi is about to come back from the injured list. And so you look at that and you say, great, there's your starting pitcher. And that's kind of been what I thought of for the whole season.
Not quite, though.
Not quite, though. So you think you slot him back in as the 2 or 3 behind Sale or Price, but that's not the strategy right now. The news this week is that the Red Sox are going to try, for now at least, to use him as their late inning guy.
Right.
So now you have your bullpen solved, because that's been a problem for them all year.
Like a long reliever closer type.
Pretty
like
much.
A Josh Hader.
Like Josh Hader, what Andrew Miller used to do,
Right.
things like that. So that is, in theory, and he's going to be, a Swiss Army knife. He might close.
What he did
might
in the
throw
World
the
Series.
sixth. Exactly, and that's why that is why Dave Dombrowski thinks that he can be that guy, is because of what they had to use him for that one game in the World Series.
So now that Carlos Carrasco, we don't know how long he's going to be out,
Right.
and that's a really sad situation.
Right.
But that pitching staff is not as good anymore, because you could argue that Carrasco is their best pitcher. Bauer's great, Kluber's great. They're all kind of at an even playing field, and Kluber's won a Cy Young.
Right.
We talked before the season about, like, the Padres could really use a Kluber type. Like, is there a team that's going to want to take on that contract and an aging ace? Because he probably won't be able to keep it up much longer. So if you're Cleveland, you got to decide right now, coming out of the break, if you start to leak down, you're in the second spot, you're not comfortable, and there are teams like Texas and Oakland breathing down your neck, you could just potentially blow it up. Lindor is a free agent soon. Maybe you try to get something back for him now instead of waiting until free agency. And otherwise, you just start to rebuild. And you could still potentially contend in a couple of years because the bottom half of that division is nowhere near close. It's really only the White Sox that are a threat.
Seems that way.
Right. So that's definitely an option for that team.
That's why Trevor Bauer has been linked for a while. And you look at a top of the rotation type starter. We mentioned, there are so many other impactful starters that might get moved. If somebody like Aaron Sanchez goes to a contending team, he's probably, the 2 on the Blue Jays right now? You probably look at him as maybe a 3 or a 4 on a contending team in terms of starting pitchers. If you're a team, if you are the Yankees, for example, who need a starting pitcher, in my opinion, if the Yankees are a team that gets Trevor Bauer, is he their ace? He's their 2 at least with Masahiro Tanaka, right?
Is everybody healthy? Is Severino back? Is Paxton healthy?
I put him ahead of Severino personally. It's Trevor Bauer.
Right.
So the point is, you can shake it out however you want, 1, 2, or 3. Right. Yeah. If you're for a lot of teams, Trevor Bauer becomes an ace or your number 2.
Sure.
And that's what a team like that needs.
And that's the other thing. The Indians, Carrasco's hurt. They could go out and get somebody. They could trade for Stroman. I don't know what their farm system looks like. And then they're back in the hunt.
Sure.
And maybe they don't win the division, but if they happen to win the wild card game, they have such a great staff that could carry them through a series. Maybe they get to the ALCS. Who knows?
You don't know.
So another team that's in the hunt, sort of, but we thought they were going to be better is the St. Louis Cardinals, and that's a team you've been following since the Pujols era. So what's going on with them?
Yeah, it's been a strange year. The thing is, with all these teams in the NL Central, which is a fascinating division, but for the Cardinals and the Pirates specifically, I had such high hopes for their pitching staff, especially for the Pirates. We'll talk about them in a second. But for the Cardinals, really none of the starting pitchers have been up to par. 0.
No.
And that has been their undoing because they had a couple of guys in the bullpen, guys that maybe you, the general baseball fan, wouldn't have heard of that were great at the start of the year. I'm talking about John Brebbia and John Gant. They were both great at the start of the year. Now, John Gant used to be a starter when he was in the Braves system, even as late as 2 years ago. But he was kind of the put-into-any-situation guy in the bullpen. He's still been very good. And Brebbia's tailed off, and there's Dominic Leone in there who's been okay. But none of the starters have been good. Miles Mikolas was a top 5 Cy Young guy last year that no one knew about. I'm not saying he should have won, but he should have gotten a little more attention than he did. He's not been good this year. I've been a big Dakota Hudson fan. You got to see him. He's not been very good this year. Michael Wacha's been bad this year. Carlos Martinez has been hurt, and now that he's been back, he pitches late innings. And now Jordan Hicks, the ultimate late inning guy, is out for the year with Tommy John.
Which
Andrew
was
Miller,
only a matter of time until that.
It does seem that way. It's tough to say, but that just based on how he throws, it seemed like a matter of time. So hopefully he is able to come back.
Sure.
Andrew Miller was the big bullpen acquisition. He's been bad.
He's been nothing special at all.
So there's really nothing to write home about from a pitching staff perspective except for John Gant, in my opinion. And so then it really offsets everything that you can do with this lineup. Marcell Ozuna's having a very good year. Paul Goldschmidt is having a slightly down year by his very high standards.
It's a very solid year, but you would expect better.
Right, especially for what they had to do to get him. So, and Carpenter's been in and out. He's been hurt a little bit. Yadier Molina, solid as always. But, I mean, the team has been underwhelming. Yeah. So maybe they get a starting pitcher. It's been the thing with the Cardinals forever. They need another starting pitcher. And so they had all these young guys. They had Luke Weaver. You trade him to get Goldschmidt. Jack Flaherty's not been up to snuff this year. Alex Reyes is hurt again. So it's Daniel Ponce de Leon isn't there yet. So you don't know.
Well, the Cardinals can no longer rely on Wainwright.
Nope.
Or Chris Carpenter,
my guy,
or Molina. These guys. I mean, Carpenter's not even there anymore.
Nope.
It's a new age in St. Louis, and I got to see them play at San Francisco. And we'll talk about the Giants in a second. They ended up winning big in this game that Dakota Hudson started. They got to Drew Pomeranz early, leadoff home run, and then Goldschmidt hit a 2-run home run later in the inning. They go up 3-0 in the first, and they never look back.
Okay.
That's the best case scenario for this team.
Agreed.
Harrison Bader's been having a little bit of a disappointing year. I'm pretty sure that DeYoung was the only representation in the All-Star game for the Cardinals.
Yeah, it's sad that I forgot to mention him. I've been a
so
fan
he's
of
having
his.
a solid year.
He's been really good this year.
But
people don't pay attention to him, honestly.
A lot of these guys, right? Jose Martinez, he's great too.
He's all right.
Colton Wong's been there for a long time. and they have Dexter Fowler. Matt Wieters started at catcher in the game that I was at because I guess Molina had the day off. So they have a lot of pieces. On paper, we thought that they were going to contend for a wild card spot without a question. And now with injuries and subpar performances, they're on the outside looking in. The NL Central, folks, is fascinating. If the season ended today, the Cubs win it by 0.5. The Brewers, they're not in.
They're not in the playoffs
and they don't
at
even
all.
get into the playoffs,
Right.
which is crazy because the wild card is 2 different teams. So there's about 8 teams in the NL that could conceivably make the wild card spot if the season ended today,
Yeah, it's nuts how close it is.
including every single team in the Central. Even the Reds, who are in last place, are 4 or so games back.
Yeah, 4.5 right now.
4.5. There are so many storylines, multiple for each team in this division. And is there anything else that we can say about the Cardinals?
I don't think so. I mean, I've gotten to exhaust
It's the argument that they're a pitcher or so away, but with every team that's fringe, you got to keep an eye on them out of the All-Star break.
Yep.
Because if they end up not putting it together and trail pretty far behind, and they end up saying, "All right, let's be sellers," another team would love to get a Colton Wong for experience. I don't know whose contracts are expiring or whatever it may be, but there are definitely some pieces on that team. Obviously, Goldschmidt is not available.
No.
But this is a team that certainly next year will be back.
You would think.
This isn't a situation where they would blow it up, but
I don't think so.
it's a disappointing year if they don't make the playoffs. Is what I'm shooting
You're
for
right,
here.
and that is the situation that they find themselves in, which is not the situation that Cardinals fans ever expect.
No.
But the other 2 teams at the bottom of the division, quote unquote, that a lot of people wouldn't have expected to even be in this conversation midway through the year, the Pirates and the Reds, like you hinted at, are very much in the conversation. Now, they're, of course, on the outside looking in as well. It would take a little bit of work for them both to sneak into the playoffs, especially if it happens as we think it will happen and the Brewers end up winning the division. Maybe that leaves a wild card spot for the Cubs. We don't know. But that then leaves one other wild card spot for another team. There's a chance it's another Central team, probably going to be a National League East team. Maybe somebody out of the West. I've just named all 3 divisions. But the thing is, the Central, there's those other 2 teams that are, look, they're below 500 at the All-Star break, but they're right there in it. That's how tight it is.
Right. So if the season ended today, it would be the Nationals and the Phillies that get the 2 wild card
Yep.
spots. But the Pirates and the Reds are still very much in it. There's situations where, sure, if you come out of the break and you lose 5 in a row, then it's probably not going to happen.
Probably not.
But if they come out and they go on a streak, as they have in recent games and months and weeks, because they're still around, we did not think they would necessarily be around at this point. We knew that this was a stacked division. We knew this was a division to watch, but we were thinking Cubs, Brewers, Cardinals at the top. So let's talk about the Reds then. They made a lot of moves this offseason. They get Sonny Gray, Tanner Roark, Wood to shore out their pitching staff. They get Matt Kemp. They get Yasiel Puig. They finally deal Homer Bailey. A lot of journeymen, let's say,
I think it's fair.
who all converge on Cincinnati in Great American Ballpark, which is very much a hitter's ballpark. And now, not only are they putting it together, but I think that this might very well be the most fun team to watch in all of baseball. And I'll tell you why. Because Yasiel Puig is a blast. Joey Votto started off with not a really great year, and you're thinking maybe this is it for him. But now he's turned it on in the last month or so, and he's back to his old form. Well, not his old form, but he's doing pretty well.
Better than he was.
And Luis Castillo is having a tremendous year.
Yeah.
But also, Derek Dietrich is
He's
the heart and
back.
soul of this roster. So before he goes to Cincinnati, he's the longest tenured Marlin. You guys know that I'm a Marlins guy, so we've been watching him for years down there. He goes to Cincinnati, and all of a sudden he's hitting home run after home run, absolutely bombarding the Pirates with homers, coming out onto the field with eye black mustaches and drawing stuff on his face, coming out in a beekeeper suit when there are bees on the field, dressing up. The Reds the other day had their sleeveless jerseys, so sun's out, guns out, and everybody's showing off their muscles. This is all without Scooter Gennett, who almost won a batting title. So they're close, Tim. And in that ballpark, like I said, it's a hitter's ballpark. There's going to be a lot of 12, 11 games. Their bullpen isn't too bad either. So definitely a team to watch.
The whole pitching staff has actually been really solid this year. And we stacked that up with the other two teams that I talked about. The Pirates, which I thought had one of the best pitching staffs in baseball coming into the year, underwhelming. Jameson Taillon has been dealing with stuff this year. Chris Archer has been extremely underwhelming. Steven Brault has been injured. So those are, probably my three guys to watch on the team. Hasn't really materialized for them. But the Reds, on the flip side, they have had such consistent starting pitching that, frankly, a lot of teams would be envious of.
Yeah.
They've got their starting five, and there's only one other guy that has started a game, Lucas Sims, who's had a solid year in AAA, was good in the Brave system. They called him up for a spot start just once. Every single other game has been started by one of five guys. It's remarkable consistency that hardly any other team has had. I think it was one point in the year that the Twins, I think, actually were the only team that had the same starting rotation.
Consistency, sure.
I don't know that that's still the case, but that was the case through 60 games, 65 games. So through 85 games, the Reds have had all but one pitcher, but the same five.
Right.
You know what I mean at this
Yeah.
point. And three of those five pitchers have been great. Sonny Gray has been great this year.
He made the All-Star game.
He made the All-Star game, was a deserving choice. I thought Tanner Roark was great when he was with the Nationals. They kind of got him in a 1-for-1 with a prospect who was also named Tanner. That was a weird trade for the Nationals, and it's worked out for the Reds. And like you said, Luis Castillo, I think, is going to be a top 5 National League Cy Young Award finalist this year. Will he win? Maybe not. I think Hyunjin Ryu might have something to say about that, but I don't know that he'll win either, but he'll be a top 3. Castillo will be top 5. That's my prediction right now.
So what I can say about the Reds, to follow up with the fact that they're really fun, video, tweets, comments about the Cincinnati Reds continues to show up on my timeline. For whatever reason, I don't follow every single Reds writer or broadcaster or anything like that, more so than any other team. It's always there. I'm not sure why, besides the fact that it's great content. It's Yasiel Puig scoring from first on a bloop single to right field to walk off. It's Joey Votto being boxed out by Amir Garrett, their huge lefty flamethrower reliever, in the 10th inning of a game, just messing around on the infield in the middle of an at-bat. It's, like I said, Dietrich being a buffoon, but also killing it in the box, and he should have been in the home run derby more so than Reyes, we were talking about before. And the fact that they're winning. Every single part of their team has been solid, let's say.
Yeah, solid.
Raisel Iglesias, 16 saves. Everything is there for this team, even Michael Lorenzen getting the occasional at-bat. So if you have MLB the pass to watch all of the different games, tune into a Reds game, and you might be able to find something fun.
It's funny, like you said, they end up on your radar all the time. And for a team that was not good at the beginning of the year and now is a thoroughly average team, we talk about them every week. It's really interesting.
We really have talked about them a lot. Isn't that funny?
I'm pretty sure every episode of this show we've talked about the Reds at least a little bit.
Maybe
it's funny how that works.
Some hidden allegiances here.
You've heard it here first. The truth will
comes out.
There's so many other teams, I guess, in the hunt for those wild card spots. We mentioned the front runners, I guess, right now, the teams that hold those spots right now, the Nationals and the Phillies, as we stand right here in the second week of July. There's a chance neither of those teams hold those spots when all is said and done because there are so many other teams in the list. We mentioned that the American League wild card might be maybe a little bit more cut and dry. It's the Rays and the Indians right now. I think the Red Sox will make a push, and then you've got the A's and Texas on the borderline as well. But there are quite literally 8 teams within 5 games of those 2 wild card spots in the National League, which means conceivably anything can happen. And then the other team on the outside are the Giants, another team that people have been watching this year, not because they're good, but they're not very good, but at the same time, they're 5.5 games out of the wild card, which is far from insurmountable. And we mentioned, with the Indians, they've got some decisions to make. The Giants, very much, a lot of decisions to make in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, We talked before the season, or as the season began, about Madison Bumgarner being a huge trade chip for a contender. I still think that the Brewers should go out and get him, but that's besides the point. The Giants, the Giants are a team comprised of young guys making their debuts or in their first couple years who are not quite ready to contribute at the point that they're, the star of a team or really pushing a team towards contention. Also, a lot of journeymen and older guys like Evan Longoria, Pablo Sandoval, Brandon Crawford, who are still okay and good and loved by the fan base, but same thing, not good enough as a collective unit to necessarily push a team to contention. 5 games back, I think that's like the best case scenario for this team at the break. We did not think that they would be that close because mathematically, I keep saying this, if they come out of the break, win 7 of 10, win 17 of 30, well, that's more so 500. But if they say a little bit above 500 throughout the rest of the year, that's usually where the wild card spots are.
Right.
And so you got to decide. If you come out and you're losing games, do you deal Bumgarner? Do you get rid of Buster Posey, who's having a terrible year and has been there his whole career, but you can never turn down a catcher with experience and a great glove and arm?
Nope.
Do you give up Brandon Crawford, who's beloved there as well, but is still one of the best defensive shortstops in the league?
Sure.
Or Brandon Belt. At this Giants game that I went to, he led off and played left field. So he's apparently more diverse than we thought he was, and multifaceted. None of these guys are having tremendous breakout years, but they could help. Or do you come out and start to win and you start to climb the ranks? You pass the Padres, you pass the Diamondbacks. You're not going to win the division, but you could sneak into a second wild card spot. Maybe Cueto comes back because he's shooting for September. He comes back and wins you that wild card game. Well, it would be Bumgarner, but you know what I'm saying. And then you're golden. So I think that of all of the teams in baseball, this might be one of 2 or 3 that we need to watch in terms of the deadline.
And remember, they've got to make these decisions coming up quickly because new this year, they've eliminated that second trade deadline thing that has caused me endless head scratches, to say the least.
So much confusion.
Over the year. Remember that Adrian Gonzalez trade to the Padres in like 2011, 2012?
It was just so much later than everything else.
Right, and coming from all other sports, as we know, I'm a huge hockey fan, the trade deadline there is usually fairly active, but once you get through that, you're done. Nothing really ever a few things happen in the NBA trade deadline, but same deal there. Once you get through that, you're done.
Right.
So now you know how the rosters are going to shape out for the playoff push, or in the case of the NBA, for the draft tanking push. So, but that wasn't the case for baseball because you had all these weird contract rules and stipulations that, frankly, I still don't fully understand that allowed players to get traded. Though that was a huge deal. It was like a 7-guy trade, the Adrian Gonzalez trade, and that changed the complexion of that season, even though the trade happened August 20th or something along those lines. So that trade deadline doesn't exist.
So now it's
anymore.
the end of this month.
It's the end of July, and that's it.
So it's a couple weeks away.
Right.
That's why the first week and a half, 2-week stretch is integral in decision making. And the Giants, all eyes are on the Giants because their owner had that assault issue with, I believe it was his wife, where the video went viral when he, laid his hands on her and it didn't look good. And so a lot of people are criticizing the organization in that sense, but now the fan base is looking on and saying, hey, we might actually be able to make the playoffs, and we love Bumgarner, Posey, Crawford. These guys have been there for forever. Don't get rid of them. Let's make a move to try to get in. But it all depends on the first 3 or 4 series out of the break.
And the first series for the Giants, they've got 7-day road trip at the Brewers, at the Rockies.
There you go.
And then home to the Mets. So those are your first 10 games.
Maybe not the Mets, but definitely
not,
2 contending teams.
All on the road.
If they win all 3 of those series, you got to think, do we start to ask around?
Yep.
At the very least.
To bring in guys instead.
Yes.
Yep. Well, I think that's going to be a fascinating team to watch. I love Madison Bumgarner, as we know. So, would I like to see him stay with the Giants just for,
Sentimental.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the word I was looking for. Yes, but at the same time, like you say, if he ends up on a team like the Brewers, which has been connected to him for whatever reasons for really this whole year, if he goes out there and tries to win another World Series as the front of a staff,
You could
I'd
definitely
like
get
to
another
see
ring.
it. I'd
And
like to see it.
Besides the fact that it's 2019, so the Giants aren't going to win this year regardless because it's an
odd
odd
year.
So
That's true.
let's just throw all of this out the window.
Gotta wait until next year anyway. All right, look, so a couple of mid-season acquisitions surely coming up in the next 2-3 weeks maximum, but this is our season in review episode, so let's talk about some of the off-season acquisitions that made headlines. We mentioned one of them already. Paul Goldschmidt was, to me, the biggest move of the offseason. Obviously, all the headlines around Bryce Harper and Manny Machado, waiting for them to finally sign, and they both signed for record amounts. And then in the midseason, we got Dallas Keuchel going to the Braves and Craig Kimbrell going to the Cubs. So what we talked about on an earlier episode, kind of an unusual situation where you have two legitimate players that just sign new contracts with brand new teams and are coming in and changing the complexion of those teams and those divisions. There's a chance both of them end up in the playoffs as well with their new teams. But let's talk about specific guys that kind of went under the radar in terms of off-season acquisitions. And now the other footnote here before I let you have at it, Goldschmidt, Harper, and Machado, those three big names that we mentioned, none of them made the All-Star game. Somebody else did.
I didn't think about that, actually.
Right? None of them did.
No. So I'm going to talk about one hitter, and then I'll give you the mic for one pitcher. The Yankees are an offensive juggernaut. There's no question about it, and they've dealt with so many injuries, and yet they still have the best record in the AL. They've been carried by a guy that was acquired in the offseason, and it flew way under the radar, and his name is DJ LeMahieu. He won the batting title in the NL with the Rockies, and everyone was like, oh, Coors Field. Yeah, that helped him out a little bit. Now he's playing at Yankee Stadium. You can't use this Coors Field argument anymore. Not only is he hitting almost 500 with runners in scoring position as their leadoff hitter.
Normally,
he's usually hitting leadoff for them. But he's first in the AL in batting average, first in the AL in singles, second in hits, and fourth in RBI. You'd think that Stanton or Judge or Gleyber Torres or Gary Sanchez or any of those guys would be the best hitter in that lineup, but right now it's LeMahieu, without a question. And he starts in the All-Star game, becoming pretty much the poster child for the Yankees in that contest. Judge didn't make it. Stanton obviously didn't make it. He's played in like 6 games this year. So, the Rockies fill that hole and they get Daniel Murphy, and no one's really talking about it that much. But LeMahieu shows up, shooting the ball to right center, demolishing AL East pitching. Yes, he gets to play the Orioles quite a bit, and he's been eating up the Rays, which is surprising. So that was their best move of the offseason, without a question.
I can't disagree. I was surprised that he got as little attention as he did. I guess he always played, the expression always is second fiddle, but I guess he played third fiddle with the Rockies with Blackmon and Arenado.
Yeah.
So he kind of was under the radar as the third musketeer, to use another adage.
You thought of him just as an average guy, that he's just going to get singles. But this year he has clearly proven that he's better in other offensive categories.
And isn't that he's a guy that might just get you singles and, the occasional double or whatever. But even if that were totally true, isn't that the guy you want at the top of your lineup, period, and at the top of the lineup that looks like that? Because you can have Luke Voigt's not a great example because he hits doubles, but you can have Edwin Encarnacion go up there, he's on the team now obviously, and hit a home run every time. But if he's hitting fourth in the lineup, don't you want LeMahieu out there leading off, getting on base?
Sure. LeMahieu's not going to steal that many bags. I guess that's the only knock against him.
Okay.
I'm not saying he's slow, but he's not notorious for steals. But you're right. In a day and age where everybody's focusing on home runs and launch angle and 450-foot blasts, here's a guy who just strikes the ball and point of contact and hits the ball hard and line drives, and he goes the other way. And the results are, you could talk about Trout being the MVP. You could talk about Bregman, even Verlander or a pitcher or something like that. LeMahieu he deserves votes.
He does.
He's been having a tremendous year, and if he can continue like this and not get hurt, as everybody around him has been, plagued with injuries, I'm really speechless about it. He's having such a great year.
And let me be fair on the other side as well. The more I think about it, I was saying he's the guy that gets on base and the other guys drive him in. And that's mostly true, but that's not totally true because, like you said, the biggest take-home stat is, the average is great and the hits are great, but the hitting with runners in scoring position is absolutely astounding.
It's bonkers.
It's been the best in the league, and Austin Meadows was up there a little bit. He's tailed off. He didn't have a very good June, but LeMahieu still did. So he's, like you said, close to 500 with runners in scoring position. So that also means that the rest of the lineup, namely a guy like Gleyber Torres, who hits 7th, 8th, or 9th maybe, fancy that, those guys still get on base. And then LeMahieu comes up and hits a single and scores a guy from second, and now you've got another run.
Exactly. That's the thing. The Yankees lineup, which I talked about on my breakdown once they acquired Encarnacion, they have such a surplus of talent offensively. Their bottom of the order could be the top of the order for any low-level American League or National League team.
Absolutely.
Without a question.
No doubt.
So now you get to the leadoff spot, and it's a guy who 1 out of 2 times, or 4.5 out of 10 times, drives them in. Imagine being Aaron Boone and having your leadoff guy go out there with second and third or man on second or whatever and thinking to yourself, oh, well, I hope he just hits the ball the other way and gets the job done. He is going to be disappointed when LeMahieu doesn't rifle a double into the right center field gap because he's so used to seeing that. And it's crazy. And he's utilizing the short porch, too. I mean, when you see the shift and everybody pulling the ball, this is such a fundamental hitter that it's so much fun to watch. And again, everybody's hurt, and he is consistently producing in that lineup. It's tremendous.
It's amazing.
And I know this looks like a Yankees jersey, but I'm not even being biased. Like, I think that he probably won't end up winning MVP, but I hope he wins the batting title. Whit Merrifield is up there too in average, but he deserves it. He really does.
I agree.
Not every day are you going to find someone who wins a batting title in both leagues, like Frank Robinson winning the MVP in both leagues. That's super uncommon. We talk about the rarities.
Yeah, and he went to the Yankees as well. So every other team passed on this guy. Now, obviously, I assume he got a good offer to go to the Yankees because they're the Yankees. But at the same time, we mentioned that he kind of flew under the radar to an extent in Colorado. No one else thought that this guy could be their starting second baseman. He plays third as well at times.
Not.
Like, no one thought that he could be this type of player for them. I'm just stunned that no one else, seemingly, it seemed. Maybe we'll find out in the offseason who else made offers or whatever. But the Yankees, coming from the position of privilege, of surplus is the best word, went out and got this guy, and they might have probably not the MVP, but the best acquisition as a hitter.
He's going to get MVP votes.
He will.
Yeah.
And he's new to the Yankees. So big surprise, they're going to have an MVP candidate.
And from hitters to pitchers, here's a guy who might get some Cy Young Award
Absolutely.
votes.
That guy's Charlie Morton. He has been somebody that I watched coming into the offseason. This was somebody that I pinpointed as another, same deal, somebody that I saw before and was like, why is nobody talking about this guy as much? I didn't think there was any reason that DJ LeMahieu should have been as under the radar as he's been. Same deal with Charlie Morton. He was so good the last 2 years for the Astros. He reinvented himself. I never thought he was very good for the Pirates, and I was just looking at his stats, and he actually had a number of good years for the Pirates. But when he came to the Astros, he really reinvented himself. He had Tommy John at one point, I'm pretty sure, at least a couple serious injuries in his career. So he quite literally reinvented how he pitches. And he looks like a new guy. He's effortless. And that has materialized into 2 really good years in Houston. And now I really think he's on pace for the best year of his career for the Rays.
Yeah.
And he joins a team that had so many question marks as a pitching staff because so many guys were hurt. Brent Honeywell is still hurt. He's out for the year. Jose De Leon also had Tommy John. He's on the mend. And most specifically, Blake Snell, who was the surprise Cy Young winner last year, to everybody that doesn't own a shirt that I'm wearing right now, has not been good this year. He's been okay, but not the Cy Young follow-up season. And so the ace of the staff, with Tyler Glasnow hurt for the last month and a half, has been Charlie Morton. And right now, as much as it slightly pains me to say it, if the Rays make the wild card game, which I expect them to, I think Morton might have a shot to start the game.
Sure.
Because like Max said, you can watch our playoff predictions to see what Max thinks might happen if the Rays make the the wild card game. But if they go straight up and use a typical starting pitcher, which they very well might not, I think it's Charlie Morton.
I mean, right now he's 10-2 with a 2.32 ERA in 19 games started, 142 Ks and 113 innings pitched. I believe he started 8-0 as well.
He did. That's right. He
made the All-Star team.
Yep, fully deserving.
Yep.
Didn't have his first loss until June 15th against the Angels, which was one of his quote-unquote worst games where he gave up 4 earned runs over 6.
And I wonder if the Astros are kicking themselves about the fact that he was able to move on, because Lance McCullers has been hurt.
Yep.
Obviously, Garrett Cole and Verlander and Wade Miley, that's a great 1-2-3, but they had a surplus of pitching in Houston. They let Morton walk, and now he is the star of the pitching staff that has, I believe, the best starter rotation ERA.
Top three.
And they also have a tremendous bullpen ERA.
Top 3.
So if you end up running into them in a wild card game or potentially the divisional series, your hitters are going to run into some trouble. Sure, the Yankees are a great hitting team. Sure, the Twins and Astros are great hitting teams. So it'll be fun to watch in that sense. Great hitters against a tremendous pitching staff. But when you go in, it's no longer, Snell is leaps and bounds by far the best pitcher on this rotation. It's not. It's Morton this year.
And he's been, his command is amazing. And unlike Snell, who's obviously this is, his 3rd year really in the majors this year, this is a guy that's been around. So people have seen him, but like I hinted at, and I don't know all the details about how he's reworked his life and his mechanics and everything, but he has turned himself into almost a new pitcher because of how much he's changed himself. And so it's like seeing a new guy that you're not used to. And so that's why he has the strikeout numbers. That's why he has double-digit strikeouts, 6+ in pretty much every outing so far. In his last 2, 12 and 10, one of those against the Yankees. So, yeah, and the Yankees have destroyed the Rays all year, especially Snell, but not Morton. Morton has actually held his own, which is kind of surprising because nobody else on that team
Snell
has.
didn't make it through 1 inning last time he was out at Yankee Stadium.
And that's going to be the matchup coming up next week. The Rays are, I'm pretty sure, at Yankee Stadium again, and Snell's tentatively going to start on Monday.
Fun.
So we'll see how that goes. I think that'll be a fun race as well, especially if the Red Sox get their act together and maybe bring somebody in.
I kind of hope that they do, honestly.
It'll be fun.
I want it to be a little tighter for the AL wildcard because we just talked about how close the NL wildcard is going to be. Right now, it's Cleveland at Tampa Bay. So I really don't think it's going to stay that way. I think Tampa Bay is going to get the top spot, and then I think the Red Sox will leak in. We didn't have enough time to address how great of a season Texas is having.
Sure.
And how much worse Oakland is playing after making the wild card game last year. And now, injuries, suspensions, they're not there anymore. So, look, bottom line, first half was tremendous. Second half is going to be even better, hopefully. We've got the trade deadline coming up. We've got returns to the field and so many different storylines to watch that do lead to the trade deadline, but also lead to playoff contention and awards races and all of that. We haven't talked about Yelich and Bellinger at all yet. So a lot of great content on the way. Please tune in. YouTube, Twitter, Spotify, Apple Music, whatever you want, and let us know how we're doing because we want to hear from you.
You can find us everywhere now. If you've been watching, thank you for doing so. If you've been listening like you've been with us all season long so far, thank you for doing that as well. We'll see you next time. This has been the first episode of Season 2 of Good Hacks. We'll see you next time. So long.